This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome you guys back for another episode of GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and as always, I want to make sure I remind you guys, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top of whenever we drop stuff. If you can, please give us a 5-star rating and review. It's very helpful. It'll help us see what you guys like, what you guys didn't like, and how we can improve and get better. And if you're on social media, we're also on social media, so find us on there, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you're on, we're on, so come find us. We can talk there, we can debate, we can, again, talk about what you guys like, what you guys don't like. And, as always, it'll be nice. You can always be a fun back and forth on there. So I hope you guys have cleared your calendars, cleared your schedules, cleared your days on Sunday, because the championship weekend is here. AFC Championship, NFC Championship. We got 2 good games, 2 rematches actually from beginning earlier in the season, which is actually pretty funny. I don't know how often that happens, but it happened this week. And the first one we're going to talk about here is the AFC Championship game between the Titans and the Chiefs. This is a rematch from Week 10, I believe. The Titans were able to win this one 35-32, and that game had kind of a wild ending to it in that the Titans got the ball for a chance to go drive down for the lead, weren't able to, had to give the ball back to the Chiefs. The Chiefs tried to run the clock out, tried to do a nice a little run pass option on 3rd and 2, weren't able to get anything going. Mahomes had to slide inbounds to help try to run the clock out. They go for the field goal to put them up. I think we tried to put them up 5. Because okay, so they scored 8. So it was 27. No, try to put them up. Oh, no, this was try to put them up 8, excuse me. And they went for a field goal. It was a bad snap. The punter, the holder, not necessarily the punter, but I think it was the punter, but the holder had to just had to throw it. And, of course, since nobody went out for a route, it was intentional grounding that gave the Titans even better field position than they already had. They were able to drive down the field. Tannehill do a touchdown pass to Adam Humphries, I believe, and it was his first catch of the game also, which is pretty funny. But yes, then they score, get the 2-point conversion. The Chiefs were able to drive down the field, getting field goal position, and try to kick the game-tying field goal to send to overtime. But nope, the Titans, we're done here. They blocked the field goal, and the game ended 35-32. So I imagine the Chiefs want to get a little bit of revenge for that. And obviously the circumstances will be a little bit different. This one's obviously is much more important. But on top of that, that one was in Tennessee. This one's going to be in Kansas City. That makes a big difference, obviously, because of the Arrowhead Stadium and the noise and all that fun stuff. And then, obviously, the Chiefs also wanting to right the wrongs of last AFC Championship game where they lost in Kansas City to the Patriots last season. So they want to right that. Mahomes, Andy Reid, and all those guys. And this game will be interesting just to see, can Derrick Henry do it again? I mean, against the Chiefs earlier this year, he had 188 and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, he's had the string of 180-yard games to both end from the end of the season into the playoffs. He had 195 last week on 30 carries, and it's just a thing. It's just one of those things where how much longer can they ride the Derrick Henry train? I mean, I imagine the Titans are going to hope it works at least for another week and then go from there, but it's just can they rely solely on him and not have Tannehill really have to do too much? Yeah, it hasn't had to do too much up until this point, but in my opinion, if you're a team that's going to win the Super Bowl, your quarterback's going to have to make some throws and make some plays, and obviously he made a couple throws in the Ravens game, that touchdown pass to Raymond on the deep play action shot. Like he made the key throws on third down to help to ice the game against the Patriots. Like he's made plays when he's needed to, but he just hasn't needed to that often. And this is a game I think he might need to, because the Chiefs, barring the Titans putting together a repeat performance from the last 2 weeks, which again is not impossible. The Titans are going to have to score points. It's going to be tough to keep the Chiefs under 28, under 30, I believe, especially at home. But again, I would have thought the same thing about the Ravens last week, and we saw what happened there. Though, obviously, 3 turnovers they were able to get were big. If they were able to do that again, that'll be important. And then obviously the stops on fourth down were basically extra turnovers. So if they're able to do that, and I mean they've been pretty good on third and fourth down this year. I believe they're 8th in both in terms of defensively. So they're able to get off the field when they need to. And against the Chiefs, you're going to need to, because obviously the more time and the more possessions they have, the more chance they have to score. So you want to try to limit their possessions and obviously then limit the amount of plays they can run per possession. Obviously, they can score in one play, so that doesn't necessarily matter. The number of plays doesn't really matter. But if you're able to get them to third down and they're able to get off the field, that'll be important, because then obviously you get the ball back for your own offense, and thus you're leaving Mahomes and Kelsey and Hill off the field, which will be key, because all 3 of those guys played extremely well in the last time they played the Titans. I believe Mahomes threw for over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill had over 100 yards and a touchdown. Kelsey had 7 for 75 and a touchdown, I believe, in that first meeting. And obviously Kelsey's coming off the big performance in the divisional round, the 10 for 134, 3 touchdowns. So they're an offense, as Tyreek Hill said earlier this week, that is impossible to guard. And the Titans going to see firsthand, I mean, they already saw firsthand, but they're going to see again firsthand how difficult that is. And the main issue they could have, depending on how they decide to allocate their coverage, is against Travis Kelce. I mean, we saw last week what he was able to do when he got single coverage when the Texans tried to bracket Tyreek Hill. He was dominating all night. Even when they tried to double cover him, he was able to draw penalties or whatever. So if he's able to do that again, that's going to be a problem. And the Titans this year have struggled against tight ends. They're 22nd in receptions and 22nd in receptions allowed and 26th in yards allowed. So obviously that's near the bottom of the league. So they give up a lot of plays, a lot of catches, a lot of yards to tight ends, and obviously Kelsey's either 1 or 2 in the tight end ranking in the league. So that could very well be an issue. If they're not able to stop him, then they're going to struggle all night. And then also from the Titans' offensive side, they're going to have to try to employ what I said they're going to have to do last week, which they kind of were able to do in terms of the keep away. Just get Derrick Henry going, keep Mahomes off the field, churn out plays, churn out first downs, churn out long drives, keep your offense on the field. And then obviously the big key will be doing that is being able to run the ball well. And obviously they have the running backs who's playing. Yeah, I mean, he was playing great the second half of the year, but he's easily been playing the best. He's arguably the best player in the playoffs so far. Derrick Henry has been. And the Chiefs' defense is susceptible against the run. They're 28th in yards per carry and 26th in yards allowed. So if there's a weakness, that is it. And then obviously that plays right into the strengths of the Titans. So if the Titans can keep the game closer, not get a big deficit, it's where they are forced to pass the ball, they can utilize Henry. And like I said, that probably be the way they can win. That's the way they want to win. I mean, when Derrick Henry has 100 yards this season, regular season and playoffs, they're 8-0. So that'll be vital in terms of them being able to win this game, is if they're able to get Derrick Henry going and not have to rely on Tannehill. Though, I mean, he was great this season during the regular season. He hasn't hit 100 yards in the postseason, which, I mean, again, he hasn't had to, so that works. But, I mean, he was great the year. He was first in yards per attempt, first in yards per completion. He was top in completion percentage. I think his pass rating was like over 115. So he had a great year. And A.J. Brown also had a great season as well, though he hasn't done as much in the playoffs. Neither of them have. So if they're able to get that connection ratcheted back up, that'll be key, because I imagine the Chiefs are going to try to do everything they can to stop the run and force Ryan Tannehill to beat them, because he hasn't needed to yet, and just see if he's capable of it. And also that plays into the strengths of their own defense, because their defense is good against the pass, very good, actually. They're 8th in yards per game, top 10 in passer rating, and top 10 in 20-plus yard completions allowed, which is key, because like as I mentioned, Tannehill was first in yards per attempt, yards per completion in the league, so he's a quarterback that's utilized the big play to his advantage. And if the Chiefs are able to stymie that, not allow him to complete those big chunk yardage plays down the field, that would be important to have, to force him to grind out drives, force him to get third down conversion after third down conversion. Because I mean, it's very hard for an offense to sustain 10, 12 play drives every time they go down the field. You're gonna need a chunk play in there somewhere. And if the Chiefs are able to keep that to a minimum and force them to have to go 10, 12, 15 plays every time they need to score, then unfortunately for them, that'll mean that if the Titans are able to do that, then that means they're grinding the clock. But also, and the more time, then there's more time there for a false start, a penalty, a hold, a fumble, and interception kind of thing. You allow teams to have the chance to make more mistakes the longer they're on the field. So that'll be very, very crucial. And also just to see if, like, I know in the first game Chris Jones didn't play. He didn't play last week. See if he's able to healthy and ready to go this week, because that'll be important up the middle and try to help out against Derrick Henry. And then also their pass rush has been pretty good. It was great again last week. I think they had, 4 sacks? Yeah, they had 4 sacks last week. They can keep that up this week against the Titans offense. Titans offensive line that is good in the run game, but not as good in the pass game. And then obviously they like to get plays down the field, so that means Tannehill's going to have to hold the ball a little longer. So if the Chiefs can get that pass rush revved up, that could help. That could also help them again get the Titans off the field, get the ball back to Mahomes, and then let Mahomes and the Chiefs offense work their magic. So that'll be key. I think this game is going. I feel strongly that the Chiefs are going to win this game, just because I just think when you have a quarterback playing at the level that Mahomes is playing at right now, it's hard to beat them. Though, if the Titans do win again, much like last week, would I be surprised? No. I would imagine Derrick Henry has a good game. I would be more shocked if they were able to hold Derrick Henry 60 yards and Tannehill threw for 350 and 3 touchdowns. If the Titans won that way, that would surprise me a little bit. But again, he's shown he's more than capable of it this season with his level of play. But yeah, I still feel strongly about the Chiefs being able to get the job done. As I said, I think they're going to want to avenge the loss from earlier. I think they're going to want to avenge the AFC Championship loss from last year, get Andy back to the Super Bowl, get the Chiefs team and franchise back to the Super Bowl. I don't think they've been to a Super Bowl in 50 years or something like that. So it's been quite a while. And yeah, if they're just able to contain Derrick Henry, which is easier said than done, then they should be able to get the job done. Though, like I said, if the Titans pull off yet another upset, I wouldn't be shocked. But also, that we'll see what happens in the Super Bowl. And honestly, regardless of what happens in the Super Bowl, in my opinion, this might be the greatest playoff run ever by a team if the Titans are able to pull this off. Going into Foxborough, I don't care that the Dolphins beat the Patriots in Foxborough the week before. It's still Brady and Belichick in the playoffs. It's difficult to do. Win there, then go to Baltimore, beat many people believe was the favorite to go to the Super Bowl. The offense hadn't been stopped all season, and they were able to shut them down. Granted, they gave up a lot of yards, but they were winning by double digits for most of the game. So you play a little bit differently on defense when you're up by more, can play a little bit more relaxed, can just allow things to just keep things in front of you. So that obviously helped with the yards, and obviously Lamar and his legs were a big part of that as well. Though not that Mahomes can't run, but he's just not Lamar Jackson. And then obviously if they go into the Kansas City, go into Arrowhead, beat the Chiefs, and beat Mahomes, I'd be hard pressed to find, at least in recent memory. I can't say for the entire Super Bowl era, but in recent memory, this would be up there for one of the greatest playoff runs, in my own personal opinion. So we'll be able to see if the Titans can go for the three-peat in terms of upsets this Sunday. But like I said, I think the Chiefs will be headed back to the Super Bowl for the first time in a long time. Just coming up next, we will talk about the other championship game, another rematch. NFC side, Packers, Niners. Should be another good one. And we will talk about that right after this break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
That was a game where the Niners just smoked the Packers. No offense to any Packers fans listening, but yeah, it was just complete and utter domination by the Niners in that game. They won 37-8, I believe. Jimmy G threw for 252 touchdowns. He had 5 sacks, got after Aaron Rodgers all night. And, I mean, that's just kind of... I mean, the Niners are a team that going into every game, you don't really know who you're going to get. And I say that in a good way. In terms of they have 6 games this year where they've won, where they've had 250 plus passing yards. They've had some games this year where they've had over 130 rushing yards, and they've won 8 games this year where they've allowed 20 points or less. So you can come in, you can play the team that's going to be, all right, you stop the run, all right, we can have Jimmy G play action, hit the ball into the hands of his playmakers, we can win that way. If we don't need Jimmy G like they didn't need him last week against Minnesota, we can just run the ball down your throat, dominate that way. And then if we need our defense to come out and shut you out, no, I mean not completely, but you understand my point, like come and shut you down, then we can have that too. And then they're showing they can win shootouts, they can win bad weather, good weather, close games. I mean, they're towards the end of the season, they were basically all their games were coming down to the end. So they're not afraid to win or be in any type of game. It's not like as, say, for like the one seed in the last game, Baltimore never really had a game where they had to come from behind. In order to win, they've always been able to play from ahead. So the Niners team is just built differently. Obviously, again, different conferences, different matchups, whatever. But this is a team that, in the Packers, that the Niners have confidence going up against. Obviously, the regular season is not the postseason, so you can't just take, all right, this team beat this team by this much in the regular season. That means it's definitely going to happen in the postseason. Not that it can't happen, because I mean some teams are just bad matchups, and this just might be a bad matchup for the Packers. But you never know for certain until you play the games, obviously. And this one will go down Sunday. This is the nightcap, and yeah, this is going to be an interesting one, just because, as I said, the Niners are very diverse. I mean, if they want to beat you running the ball, they're one of the best teams in the league running the ball. Second in yards per game, top 10 in yards per carry. I mean, last week it was Tevin Coleman who had the big game, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. But they also have Raheem Mostert, who averaged over 5 yards a carry, Matt Breida, who averaged 5 yards a carry during the season. So, on top of not knowing which offense is going to show up in terms of what they're going to need to do, you don't know which running back's going to show up. You don't know who's going to get the hot hand in that game, who's going to be the star. So I imagine, as a defensive coach for defense coordinator Mike Pettin, it would be tough to try to game plan for 3 different running backs who are all good, but are a little bit different in terms of what they can and can't do. So, and when you go into a game and you're say you're playing like a Zeke or like maybe not a Todd Gurley as much anymore, unfortunately, but like a Derrick Henry, McCaffrey, even like an Aaron Jones, like you know that's mainly the guy. You know what he does well, what he doesn't do well, so you can game plan for that. But when you have an offense as diverse as the Niners, and you have to plan for 3 different running backs, so you don't know which one's going to be the star of that game, I imagine that would definitely keep me up at night if I was a defensive coordinator. So that'll be interesting. And then on the flip side, I mean their defense is superb, especially obviously through the against the pass. They're first in yards per game against the pass. Bridget Sherman's been shut down. He had a pick last week against Kirk Cousins. He's allowed under a 50 passer rating this season. They're first in yards per attempt, first in yards per completion, first against 20-plus yard completions. So they're a team that is tough to pass against, and also they're a team that is able to get after the pass very well. And the reason why I believe, and the numbers probably back this up, is why they're so good against the pass is because they don't have to blitz that often. I think they only blitz about 25% of the time, which is 22nd in the league, and yet they're top 5 in sacks. So their front four is just so dominant. I mean, Nick Bosa was a monster last game. He's been great for them all season. D Ford's back and healthy now. Obviously, they added Quan Alexander, came back too. One of the safeties, I think it was Jimmy Ward. He's a Ward or Tart, I don't remember, but I think it was Ward came back from injury this year. So they're one of the rare scenarios where you add players in the playoffs. Normally, guys are getting hurt, so teams are going to the playoffs without guys. Very rare you get guys back during the playoffs, and that's obviously what happened for the Niners in that defense. That was already great. It was a little worse towards the end of the season. Again, part of that was because guys were so banged up. But now that all the guys are healthy and they're able to play all their star guys together, they're even more deadly than they were at the beginning of the season. And that's the thing, is that in the last game, I believe they sacked Rodgers 5 times. I mean, I mentioned that already, but they sacked Rodgers 5 times, and that's going to be the key, because if they're able to get to him again, much like in the first game, it's going to be a struggle for Aaron all night. Just because their passing game has been a little iffy this year. They're only 17th in yards per game, and their one main threat, well, I guess the 2 main threats are Devontae Adams, who is great, and the good thing about him is that he can line up on either side of the field, and normally Richard Sherman doesn't travel. So if you can line him up opposite him as much as you can, then you can exploit that other cornerback out there. I know 23 for the Niners was having a rough game to start against the Vikings. They ended up subbing him out. And the guy that subbed in was a little bit better. But again, Devontae Adams is one of the better receivers in the league, definitely one of the best route runners in the league. So he can get open on most guys. But obviously, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I want to test Richard Sherman as little as possible, because as I said, this season and over the course of his career, he's been great. So it's like, why risk it if you don't have to? So I imagine that's going to be the case. And if they're able to get Devontae Adams going, that'll be big for them, because they are 5-1 in games where Adams has 100-plus yards. And I believe the only game they lost was the Eagles game in Week 4, and that was partly because Devontae Adams went out with injury. I believe when he went out, he had 180 yards receiving. So had he stayed in, there's a chance he would have gone over 200 yards, and there's a good chance they win the game there at the end. So getting Adams going will be important. And obviously their other best offensive option, I mean, both on the ground and then especially through the air, is Aaron Jones out of the backfield. He's second on the team in targets and receptions and third in receiving yards. So he's been a crucial part of their passing game. He's a guy that they can get it to him on screens. Out of the backfield, they can line him up on out wide, get him screens that way, get him on different routes down the field. So he's a versatile option. Has been great for them all season. I mean, on the ground, he's been even better than through the air. 16 rushing touchdowns, led the league in that regard, and had over 1,000 yards. So if that's, they're going to need a good game out of him to have a chance. Because I don't think this is a game, especially not against this defense, where you can just rely on Aaron Rodgers to be able to work his magic. Because it's just not. It's with the lack of weapons they have on the outside, opposite Devontae Adams, it's going to be nearly impossible for you to just expect Aaron Rodgers to throw 300 yards and get the win. So they're going to need something out of Aaron Jones, especially on the ground. I mean, the Niners defense isn't bad against the run, but they're worse against the run than against the pass, so that's obviously the way I would want to exploit them. And then also what's going to need to be important is their defense is going to have to be able to find a way to get to Jimmy G and also potentially turn him over. I mean, they had 6 sacks last week. A lot of that is because Russell likes to hold the ball a lot. I'm going to hold the ball for a long time to work his magic and run around and get guys open down the field. Jimmy D is not going to do that. He's more of a quarterback, more timing-wise. He'll get the ball out when it needs to get out. Though, if you have tight coverage, you can get him to hold the ball, kind of shuffle his feet, pat the ball around, and then you can cause him into bad decisions or get him into sacks. And obviously, they have 2 guys coming off the edges in the not brothers, but like the Smith brothers for all intents and purposes. Each of them had 2 sacks last game against Russ. So if they can get good games out of those guys, that'll be key. Though the Niners O-line has been pretty good in terms of sacks allowed this season, so it's not going to be easy. They were going up against a very beat up, and even when it was healthy, it wasn't that good Seattle O-line, and that's not the case this week. So that'll be just a difference. So we'll see what they can do on the edges. Like I said, if they can get to Jimmy Garoppolo or at least make him uncomfortable. You saw as evidence he was good that first drive against the Vikings, but the rest of the game he was just kind of like all right. They didn't really need him to do that much, but he threw the 1 interception to Kendricks. He had a couple other throws that could have been potentially picked off. So he's not a guy he is a guy that can be turnover prone sometimes. He's not always, but I know he had 13 picks on the year, a few fumbles too. So he's a guy that if you can rattle him, he will throw you the ball in certain scenarios. So that could be the key, especially, like I said, going up against the defense is good. Getting those extra possessions, getting those short fields, those will be crucial for the Packers offense. That could very well be in for a long night. Get their defense helping them out, putting them in advantageous situations when they get the ball in offense will be very important in my opinion. If they're not able to turn the ball over and get good field position and have to force the Packers to have to go on a long drive after a long drive in order to score, it could be a rough one. And if you're a Packers fan, God forbid the Niners get up early and they're just able to pin their ears back and get after Aaron Rodgers with that front four. It could end up looking a little similar to the first game. I don't think it'll get that bad in terms of score, but it could be bad. And then I haven't even touched on George Kittle yet, who was a monster in that first game. He had over 100 yards and a touchdown, and their defense is in the bottom portion of the league in terms of their in terms of what they allow to tight ends. So that's a matchup I imagine Kyle Shanahan already knows about and is going to be ready and willing to exploit. So that's going to be an issue. And then also on top of that, their run defense isn't that good. So, like I said, some teams are just bad matchups, and I believe even though they have Aaron Rodgers, he can still work his magic. He can maybe turn back the clock, get one more vintage A-round performance out of him. But just defensively, they don't match up very well against the Niners, assuming Jimmy G doesn't just turn the ball over all the time. Which, again, he can do and he will do from time to time, but if Jimmy G plays a clean game, then I would be hard pressed to see the Niners losing this game. So, in my opinion, I believe Super Bowl will be Niners and Chiefs. I mean, in fairness, they're, I guess, the 1 and 2 seed. I mean, the Niners have been arguably outside the Saints the best team in the NFC, in my personal opinion, this year, and then the Chiefs were right there with the Ravens, in terms of the best team in the AFC, and then obviously they also were without Mahomes for a couple games, and they would split those games, I believe. But yes, they were with Mahomes, so even if they win another game, maybe they could have gotten the 1 seed because they beat the Ravens, so they would have potentially gotten the 1 seed. So that would have been interesting. But yeah, I just think the Niners are a bad matchup for the Packers. Again, It's Aaron Rodgers. It's Jimmy G in his first NFC Championship game. Excuse me. I wouldn't be shocked if the Packers were able to pull this off, and also just it would be a cool storyline. The Packers and Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and the NFL's 100th year. Obviously, this isn't the 100th Super Bowl, but in the 100th year rematch of the first Super Bowl, that'd be a cool storyline. I imagine the NFL would love that from a story perspective, and then obviously the young and the old quarterbacks dueling it out. Maybe a passing of the torch, if you will, in terms of the best quarterbacks in the league. Aaron Rodgers was that. Him and Tom Brady were that for a long time. And then, obviously, Mahomes and the Lamars and Deshaun and Wentz and some of those other new guys that are coming in to take those old guys' spots. So that'd be a cool passage to the torch kind of Super Bowl. But yeah, I think Niners are going to get it done. I think Chiefs are going to get it done, though. Like I said, all four, I could see any of the four outcomes playing out. But I think the Niners are too good, especially at home, and the defense is just too good, and they're going to be revved up, ready to go. And then I think the Chiefs are going to try to make amends for the AFC Championship performance last season. So that's how I think it's going to go. Again, we'll be back here on Sunday to see if I am correct, if I'm incorrect, what I did get right, what I didn't get right, how all the games play out. We'll be here, talk about them after they are over. So after this next break, we will talk about we were talking about more developments that have come from the Houston Astros cheating scandals. Another manager's been fired. More teams and players have come under the fire, and there was a lot of burner account activity that went on today. So we will talk about all that right after this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back here once again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So if you didn't listen to the last show and you weren't on top, and you're not just a person that follows baseball and on top of this stuff, the Houston Astros were being investigated since November. They're being investigated for literally using monitors to steal signs and then getting that information and relaying it to their hitters, whether it's using trash cans or banging or whistling or whatever. The investigation showed that they did that in the 2017 season, during the regular season and the postseason, and early into 2018 until they stopped, and they didn't do it at all into 2019. But they're reprimanded for it. Their manager and GM got suspended for a year, but then they both just were subsequently fired. The team got fined $5 million, and then they got their first and second round draft picks taken away for the next 2 years. So then, stemming from that, Alex Cora, who was one of the main components of this activity from the Astros, took that, brought it to Boston. We don't know exactly what he did there because they're investigating the Red Sox now too, but he took it there, helped them win a World Series, but obviously just due to his connection, we don't know exactly what he's done yet. We'll find that out shortly as the MLB goes through their investigation. But he was also relieved of his duties. Apparently, they claimed it was the mutual parting of ways, but in all seriousness, he was, for all intents and purposes, fired because they couldn't just have someone, whether whether he did or didn't do it, I mean, we're probably going to find out that he did do it, but whether he did or didn't, he just couldn't have someone associated with that around the team. And then the other big name that was mentioned was Carlos Beltran, who was a player then, but is now the manager of the Mets. And the interesting point of that may have been that no other player was named. So I wonder if he would have been named had he still been playing, or if he had even taken the manager role. Like if he was just off, retired somewhere, or just like off in somebody's front office, I wonder if he would have been exposed like that. So that was an interesting aspect of it. But unfortunately for him, he was. So then we talked about on the last episode whether or not we thought the Mets were going to what the Mets were going to do with him, and they ultimately decided to let him go as well. Again, another mutual parting of ways. But now that is 3 manager positions open. It's now, I'm recording this on January 16th, and so it's about a month or so, depending on who your team is, until pitchers and catchers reports, and now 3 teams are out of a manager. So that'll be interesting to see kind of how those go. I know Buck Showalter's already interviewed for the Astros job, which, I mean, that's probably the best job of the 3, and he kind of makes sense. He's kind of like the old school, like, do it the right way kind of thing. So that might be what they need coming from Hinch, even though he, in the reports and in the investigation, it was shown that he was not a guy that was happy about it. He broke the monitors, I think, on a couple of occasions to try to get them to stop doing it. But obviously they kept doing it, and he didn't necessarily do all that he could to stop it, even if he did break the monitors a couple of times. And obviously they won the World Series, so he benefited from it personally. So well, that was interesting. But yeah, so Beltran's out, and that led to a lot of discussion and a lot of tweets and a lot of thoughts on social media today, including tweets from what people thought, or from who people thought was his niece, I believe was the initial story, but the family, through a reporter that works at ESPN, said that it wasn't anybody related to the family, and I think it was Gary Sheffield Jr., which is like a weird person to be tweeting this out, said it was like a burn account from a player. Maybe he was associated with the Astros or associated with the Yankees or the Mets or whoever, but he was coming out saying that the Astros, well, specifically he named we don't know who, named Bregman and Altuve as players that wore like buzzers to get like signals from there, as opposed to once they weren't doing the banging and stuff anymore. And then that led Twitter into a frenzy. Then you go back and you watch the ALCS walk-off home run he hit against Chapman to end the series, and he's telling the guys not to rip his jersey off. And I remember watching it, and I didn't think much of it at the time. And then I know he was interviewed about it, and he said that, like, oh, he's just shy. And, like, the last time that happened, his wife got mad or whatever. So, again, I know I didn't think much of it, and no one else thought much of it at the time. But then when you look back on it now, it looks a little suspicious. And then also I believe there's video of him running into the locker room with, like, his jersey on and the T-shirt and the hat and stuff to go change out of it. So that also isn't a good look for him. So yeah, that was one of the things. Then there was like other stuff that had so then people were just investigating all of that, going through screenshots, going through tweets, videos, anything they could find. There was a couple other videos they saw of like something that may have been there, but it just looked like wrinkles to me in the jerseys. I mean, other players had them. I don't think everybody's cheating per se. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where this all goes from here. I think this investigation has gotten bigger than I imagined the MLB ever thought it would be when it first started investigating this, or even when it first started notifying teams like, hey, like we need to stop doing this. Just because now at this point, I mean, it's spread to at least 2 teams, potentially. I guess we will never know if it would have spread to the Mets because Beltran never even was able to manage there. And then also I know he was with the Yankees in some capacity last season, and Alex Cora made the point of, in like a press conference, when they played them earlier this year in London, I believe he made the point of mentioning how the biggest addition, the free agent addition that the team, the Yankees, had made was the addition of Carlos Beltran, and like winked. And there's a video of that press conference on Twitter. I imagine you can find it on like YouTube or wherever. But so that was obviously I don't think that caused much of an uproar at the time. But again, looking back on it now, that looks a little suspicious. So there's no proof that the Yankees did anything. There's also like no proof that this buzzer thing is true, because the MLB said that they investigated into them using that kind of device on their jerseys, and they found nothing. They said that the Astros didn't cheat at all during the 2019 season, at least. So I would tend to think they would not have a reason to lie about that. But obviously, it's Twitter, it's social media, it's fans. Whenever they get the hint of something, they'll find any and everything to confirm what they think they know or think they believe. So that was definitely interesting. But yeah, just this whole ordeal just kind of gotten out of hand. And then mainly another from the Mets perspective again. This was interesting. Mark Craig, who's a national baseball writer for The Athletic, used to cover the Mets. Said that he tweeted out that Brody Van Wagenen, who's the GM of the Mets, is saying that he hadn't heard of any suspicion regarding the Astros, therefore was never asked of Beltran during the hiring process. And this Mark Craig was tweeting, Mark Carrig, tweeting that he found that interesting because there were rumors out there about the Astros after that. And I think the first report came out in November, and he was hired like a week or so before. So you would think after that stuff came out, you would at least ask him about it. And whether or not they did off the record, and he denied it, is intriguing to see. But obviously in the press conference they had earlier, that he didn't claim to ask him about that, which again is interesting. And all this is kind of interesting just because if the one pitcher, Mark Fears, I believe, who was with the A's now, didn't really come out and like put his name to this kind of stuff, and it was just like an anonymous tip or source or whatever talking about it. That would be, I don't even know if they would have gone to a full-fledged investigation on it, honestly, because it was just like, if it's just one random player being like, hey, like I think they cheated, they might have looked into it, but they wouldn't. It might have been a big deal. But when it was like a player that like put his name on and put his face on and said like, hey, I know for a fact because I was with the team when it was happening, this is what we did, this is how we did it, and then you come to find out like, oh wow, he's telling the truth. It's definitely interesting to see that what has come out from this. And also on just another thing on the buzzer thing, Altuve, through his representation, Scott Boras, denied the claims of the buzzers. So it'll be interesting to see what more comes of that. And like Boras told the New York Post that Altuve has never been involved in any information with the use of an electronic device that is triggered during the course of a game. Fans need to keep in mind that there are a lot of players who are in the spiderweb, but they are not the Black Widow just because they are a member of a team or the league. So, and then obviously like the MLB said the league explored wearable devices during the investigation. They found no evidence of it. And I told you why Altuve claimed. So that's interesting to see who else comes out to defend themselves, because this is really this is just the one buzzer thing. This is not saying he didn't involve himself with the trash cans and the whistling and all that stuff. But this is the first really Astros player to come out and say anything about this in defense of themselves, and it'll be interesting to see if anybody else, if Bregman comes out, because he was another guy that was claimed to be wearing the buzzers through that Twitter account. What Correa says, George Springer. Obviously, in Beltran's statement, he was very remorseful for what he did and said that he was trying to be helpful, and he took on a life of his own and went too far. So obviously, he took some blame for whatever had happened, but he didn't say exactly what he did and didn't say exactly what he didn't do. So he obviously didn't say who else was involved. So that'll be interesting to see just how, as this investigation continues to unfold, what comes of it and like where it goes and who it affects. And speaking of who it affects, after this break, we're going to talk about if I think it will, or if I think it should start to come down on the players, because some players around the league started to weigh in on it and they had some opinions, and I may tend to agree with them, though if it goes down the path they want, it could get really, really messy really, really fast. So we'll talk about that right after this break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast. So speaking of the players, Trevor Bauer tweeted earlier today, I'm recording this Thursday night, he tweeted about how he had also heard from multiple parties that about the buzzer thing. So that was interesting. So that definitely caused some stir. I know he was on, I believe he played against them. I mean, the buzzer thing would have been, I think that might have been more this year. So he was with the Reds for a part of this year. But I know he played against them in the playoffs when he was with the Indians. So it'd be interesting to see who he got that from and what part of that is true, what isn't true, and what else he may have heard about the situation. But one of the strongest statements or tweets that came out today was from Cody Bellinger, who's obviously on the Dodgers, and was most directly hurt by this cheating, because I say lost back-to-back World Series against the Astros and the Red Sox. So that definitely hurt them. And he said that on Twitter, he tweeted earlier, "For the sake of the game, I hope this isn't true." And I think this might have been the buzzer thing, but this might just be all of this. Isn't true. If true, there needs to be major consequences to the players. That completely ruins the integrity of the game. And Alex Wood, a teammate of his, quote tweeted it and said, "Amen. The fact that there hasn't been any consequences to any players up to this point is wild." And I kind of tend to agree with them. Because if you look at the 2017 postseason, there is a screenshot that was going around today of Altuve's home and road splits. So during that season, he had 35 during the playoffs. He had 36 at-bats at home, hit .472, 6 home runs, 12 RBIs, and an OPS of 1.541. On the road, he hit .143 with only one home run, 2 RBIs, and a .297 OPS. Now, he might have just been struggling on the road. That might not necessarily mean anything, but when you look at stuff like that from a player's perspective, you're like, all right, somebody did, either he was really cold or he was involved in this. And I'm not trying to single out Altuve in here, but it's just that, if you're a player, and especially a player that competed against the Astros, I can understand why you would come down like this, because you're like, hey, this directly affected me and my team and potentially my family in that, because because, a lot of people's legacies are built in the postseason, especially. Regular season as well, but, in the postseason. So, that's when all the eyes are on you. That's where the moments matter more. So, if you're going up against guys that are actively cheating, no matter what way it is, but if they're actively cheating, and you're a player that's not doing, you're trying to do it the right way, especially in a game like baseball where everything's so everyone's so on top of like doing everything the right way, integrity of the game, all that stuff. So if you're going up against a team that isn't doing that, and then it's obviously benefiting them and hurting you, whether you're a pitcher that gave up some home runs to the Astros during the World Series, during that postseason run that may have hurt you come free agency time, come contract negotiation time. I imagine you'd be very angry if you're a player whose team lost to them because they were actively cheating and were hurt that way. And then obviously, like, you don't win a World Series, then that hurts your legacy, that hurts the way you're remembered. I can understand being angry. So if I'm Cody Bellinger, or I'm a member of the Dodgers, or like a member of the Yankees, I know CeCe was pretty outspoken about this as well, and about what needs to be done. I think he also talked about vacating the title, which I've talked about as well. I think that should happen. But in terms of players, I understand why people would want these players suspended or something, at least something done to them. Because the same thing happened with I was young, but like when the steroids happened, I imagine if you're a player that's clean, those guys are dirty. If there's stuff that's found out about them, because obviously it's different because you could just fail the test, so that was like pretty clear and obvious. Although obviously in the case of Barry Bonds, he didn't fail any tests. Many people believe that he did take steroids. He probably did take steroids, but he never failed any tests. So we can neither confirm nor deny. We can't confirm. He can deny, but we can't confirm. But if you were a player during that time when you were clean and you knew other people were doing it the wrong way, then obviously they're breaking records, they're beating you out for awards, things like that. I imagine you'd be PO too. So if I'm a member of the Dodgers, I can understand wanting some justice or something to happen for the players. And if that does happen, the MLB does go down that path, it's going to be a very slippery slope, because it's like, where does it stop? Because I imagine, because obviously from the investigation, they had an idea of which coaches were involved, and they obviously mentioned Beltran by name. Obviously, I do believe that a part of that was because of the fact that he's no longer a player, and so they decided to keep the players that were involved under wraps. But if they know of anything directly or know of anybody directly, I do believe if there's enough outpouring from other players, the owners, the media, whoever, there's a chance that some players could end up being suspended, and that's where I think you get tricky, because it's like, do you just suspend everyone from the team? Do you just suspend certain players? How do you like verify, unless you get the guy that was like doing the banging or doing the whistling or whatever, like how do you verify who did and who didn't utilize it? Like, unless you're going to go back through every person's at bat and to see, all right, did this happen? I mean, some people might have been like, hey, like, I don't want to know. I'm good. You guys can do it, like, whatever, but I don't want to know. And they might have still, and that's the thing, they might have still done it anyway. So it's just like, you can't, like, how do you police that person? Like, it's just their word being like, hey, like, I didn't want it done. But if you go through their at bats and you hear the banging or you hear the whistling or whatever, then it's like, all right, we heard it here, but then the guy can just be like, I didn't want it, blah blah blah. So it's just like the slope gets pretty slippery. And then, like I said, who do you suspend? Who do you not suspend? Is it just the Astros players that get suspended? And if that's the case, do they would you not be able to suspend the Red Sox players? You'd not be able to suspend. I don't think the Yankees did anything, but just in this hypothetical, say Beltran helped out one or two players in terms of trying to communicate some stuff with them. Who did you suspend and where does it end? Like, where does it end? Because it's like you can't. This isn't like one of those things where it's like an easy thing to figure out who did and who didn't do it. Like I said with the steroids, you take a test, either you pass the test or you fail. So, I mean, granted, there were ways to try to pass the test even if you were using steroids, but in theory, if you pass the test, you're cool, you're good, you're clean, and if you fail the test, then obviously you failed and you did this. There was no test for that, or there's no test for did a player willingly utilize the technology to steal signs and benefit from it. Like, how do you test that? How do you determine that? Unless more players or more former Astros players are going to come out and snitch on the guys, and then if that's the case, then that's even a different slippery slope, because I know Jessica Mendoza was on Golic and Wingo earlier, and I know she's affiliated with the Mets to a degree, and she was disparaging the A's pitcher who spoke out about it just because like you're supposed to like have your teammates back, blah blah blah, whatever. And I mean that was a weird defense because I'm like if someone's cheating and I'm no longer on their team, then and they're still cheating, then it's just like I understand why he did it because it's like it would directly hurt him if he plays the Astros and they're utilizing whatever technology they're utilizing, and then obviously his numbers are worse against them. So I understand why he did it, and also just like integrity of the game stuff, blah blah blah. But then also he was on the team that won a World Series, so you directly benefited from it too. So it's like weird to separate yourself from that when I don't know what your involvement was, but you at least benefited from it to some degree. So, but yeah, like I'm saying, it's just like where would it stop? Like, do you suspend like the whole team? Do you suspend certain players? And then, like I said, and if you do suspend certain players, then do they start to snitch on other players and be like, hey, it wasn't just me, it was him too? And then also, like, I know as Trevor Bauer said that he had heard about this from multiple parties. So I'm like, are they the only team? Were those the only two teams that are doing this? Is these like the two, like the Oscorp was involved with it in Houston, and then took it to Boston, and like that was it? Or is there other teams involved? And like I'm saying, if there are other teams involved, whether you're tipped off anonymously or on the record, then it's like, all right, then even if there's one third team, like just I don't know, just like a random third team, now you have to investigate them again. Now you got to, like, if you suspend players on the Astros, then you have to suspend players on the Red Sox, and you have to suspend players on this third team, and it just gets a bit messy. So I could see why they hadn't decided to suspend the players yet, because you don't, like I said, the slope is very slippery once you start to go down there, because you kind of can't stop. Like, at least, like, there's a precedent for, like, suspending the manager's already been fired, but maybe suspending the GM, firing the GM, whatever. Like I said, there's a precedent there. But if they retroactively decide to suspend players, there's no precedent for that. So just like when, like, is it going to be a Red Sox thing because they did it second and they should have known better? So then do they just get suspended? So then you let the Astros guys off the hook, and like I said, there's a third team. Like it all become a mess. So I understand. Like again, if I'm a player that was directly affected by this, I can understand why I want players suspended because they were the ones that were doing it. The managers and the GMs and the bench coaches and whoever, whether they knew or whether they were helping, that's one thing, but the players themselves were the ones that were directly benefiting from it. So I would want something to be done to the players. But at the same time, if they do something, then it just, like I said, it becomes a bit of a mess. So we're going to see how this continues to play out throughout this entire season, or just into however long the Red Sox investigation is, and then if they decide to do any more investigations into other teams, and then even also just is this just like going to be a one and done kind of thing? Like our team's just going to be like, hey, I'm done with the sign stealing, or is they just going to try to get more advanced? I really don't know, but that part will be interesting just because, as Alex Cora was mentioning, like sign stealing was a thing he's known about since forever. So this isn't new to the game. Just the way that it's being done is new. So our teams are just going to be like, hey, I'm good on the sign stealing, or they're just going to try to do it in a more advanced way? And if they do it in a more advanced way, will they get caught? And that's what I'm saying. This is taken and gotten a lot bigger than I think the MLB ever could have imagined when they first got the tips about it, or even when the pitcher came out and talked about it. The former Astros pitcher even came out and talked about it. I think it's even bigger than he would have imagined. I mean, good for him for speaking up, but yeah, this has become quite a bit of a mess. So we will keep our eyes and ears to the streets on that one, see what's going on there, and then if any more news comes out of this, any more people are fired, any more people are let go, any more people are suspended, titles are vacated, whatever. Any news that comes out of that, I will be here to talk about it to you guys. So coming up next, a major star is returning to the octagon. I imagine you know who that guy is, but if you don't, then we will talk about it right after this break. So sit there and be patient.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
We are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, if you didn't know or you weren't aware, Conor McGregor, one of the people in the UFC that many love to hate, is making his return to the ring this Saturday. UFC 246 is going down. He's fighting Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Other matchups, obviously other matchups on the card. Holly Holmes on the card. Maurice Green's on the card. There's other things, but the main event, what everybody's tuning in for, the reason why it's being talked about is Conor McGregor is returning to the, well, I guess I shouldn't say ring, to the octagon. Let me clear that up. To the octagon. Conor hasn't fought since 2018. He's only fought twice since 2016. In that time, he fought Floyd. Obviously, though, that was a boxing match, so it was a little different. But he hasn't fought since 2018, and back in 2018, that's when he fought Khabib, and then there was the whole controversy in the lead-up. Then after he was defeated, then Khabib went in, fought one of the members of his team, and it was just a big tussle outside the ring, in the ring. That was all a mess. People were suspended. That was all a big mess. So Conor specifically was suspended for 6 months, I believe. So that's a part of the reason why he hasn't fought since then. Also, he had some injury that pushed the fight. He's supposed to fight in 2019, but then some injuries pushed it back. But now he's here. He's back. He's ready to go. And it'll be interesting to see how Saturday goes and what comes of it. Mainly, Conor is still, he's still talking, but he seems more subdued, a little more humble, if you will, not quite creating the quotes and the controversy that he normally, or he had been doing recently in his lead-ups to fight. He's a little more subdued, and that's an interesting look for him, just because is this just like an act, if you will? Is he just like putting this on, and then obviously after the fight, if he wins, then he's going to be back to the old Conor? Is this just who he's going to be? And it's very possible this is just who he's going to be now. He's older, he's matured, he's been through some things, both here and in his hometown his home country of Ireland. He's been through stuff, so maybe he's just realizing, hey, that older guy was the brash, brazen. Obviously, I imagine he still likes the vitriol and stuff from the fans. That's kind of what got him popular, and that's what made him the big star he was. But this more humble side of him has been refreshing to see, especially for UFC fans. So it'll be interesting to see how he keeps that up. But yeah, this is an interesting one, just because it's at the welterweight division. Conor wanted to move it up just because some of the potential fights he could have after that at that division. There were a couple guys that he may want to go after. If he were able to win, obviously, he got to get past Cerrone first. None of that matters. None of his other matches, none of the potential paydays he could have, none of the potential things he could line up matter at all if he's not able to come back and win on Saturday. And maybe that's why he's a little more subdued, if you will, just because he knows how important this is. because a lot of people, certain people, once they start to fall off a little bit, they kind of they maybe use the talk and the lead up and the back and forths to kind of overshadow their ability now, because they may not be as good as they once were. They may not be taking it as seriously as they once were. So that stuff to try to hype up the fight, and then obviously when they get in, it doesn't go their way, and then it all kind of dies out. But I believe Conor specifically seems like a guy who knows how important this is, seems focused, and seems like he wants to be back in the UFC fighting more regularly. I mean, he's talking about different guys he wants. We'll get to that in a little bit, but like I said, none of that matters if he doesn't get past Cowboy on Saturday. So this fight is interesting. Cowboy's coming in with 2 straight losses, though. I mean, in fairness to him, he's been fighting the top guys at the lightweight level. He lost to the number 1 guy, Tony Ferguson, and the number 3 guy, Justin Gaethje. I'm not like sure I pronounce his name, but he lost the number 1 and number 3 guys in the lightweight division in his most recent fights. So it's not like he's fighting scrubs. It's not like he's lost to scrubs. Like, he's lost to very good fighters at that weight class. So nothing to be ashamed of. Obviously, he's a little bit older, or a little bit further along in his career. Now, he's fought more recently. His last fight, he had how many fights in? Let me see how many fights he had in 2019. He had 4 fights in 2019 alone. He last fought was in September. So obviously that's much more recently than Conor, and he's the guy that's always been willing to fight any and everybody. I mean, he has quite the extensive number of fights on his ledger. So, so he's a guy. So that's why this is a match that definitely made sense for Conor in terms of his comeback match. He couldn't just come back and fight Khabib again, or go for a title shot or whatever. In order, they need to fight somebody. 'Cause I think he's Conor's 4th now in the rankings on UFC.com in the lightweight division, and then Cerrone's 5th. So that matchup makes sense. Get his feet wet, get him back and get the feel of the ring again, and then obviously this is a match where he's a heavy favorite for. Many people think he's going to win. I mean, you never know, because it's fighting. Just one hit or one kick or one elbow, one knee, whatever could shut Conor down. So you never really know. But obviously this is a match that many people think he's going to win, and if Conor wants to do what he wants to do down the line, if that's fight more higher level people, he's going to need to win. And I think this fight is going to be interesting just to see how, if his left still as good as it was back in the day. Because that's the thing, and he can keep this fight on his feet and keep them both on his feet. That's where he's going to have the shot to win. And then, because obviously Cowboy's a better on the ground guy. A lot of his wins are by submission. So if he gets Conor to the ground, then that could spell trouble for Conor. So you have to try to keep this fight standing up. And also, I know Cerrone has been susceptible to southpaws over the course of his career, and especially to the body shots. So I'm assuming Conor knows that. So if he can utilize that and get to the body, then be able to use the jab to get to the face and to be able to land that one or 2 good punches to help put him out, and then obviously from there just ground and pound him in order to stop the fight. That could be big. Also, I mean, it's just interesting to see just where Conor's at now. Like I said, he's fought twice since 2016, hasn't fought in the UFC since 2018. So just it'd be interesting to see where is he at? Has he added new things to his game? Is he still the same? Is he smarter now? Is he more tactical? Is the punching power still there? How is his fighting now? Like I said, if he wins this fight, which again many people think he's going to do, I think he's going to do, but again it's fighting. You never really know with these things. Then I mean he's got quite the potential matchups for him. He could fight either 2 guys. Cowboy just fought Ferguson and Gaethje. He could fight Usman who just won the title over Covington at the welterweight division. He could fight Jorge Masvidal. He could potential rematch with Khabib. Like, there's a lot of options for him and a lot of potential big paydays for him if he wins this fight. Obviously, I mean, at this moment in time, obviously, Conor's the biggest name, the biggest draw in UFC, in my own personal opinion. So whenever his name's on the card, no matter who the matchup is, eyes are going to be tuned in. People are going to watch. People are going to listen. People are going to be intrigued by it. So, there's quite a few different storylines you can go with depending on the matchup and depending on who the potential next opponent is. So, like I said, I think Conor knows that. So he knows what he has to do in order to get to that. If he's serious about being in the UFC still, continuing to fight, continuing to be a part of this, have this be a part of his life, and obviously not have his legacy just diminished, as then he's going to take this serious and he's going to do what he can to win. And if he wins, then bada bing, bada boom, he can cash in another big payday for, like I said, whether the litany of potential opponents he has. Like I said, I named 5, and that's just me thinking off the top of my head and a little bit of research I've done. There's probably even more names like I haven't even mentioned that he could possibly fight. And obviously, like, Dana White knows this stuff, so he probably already has a plan in place for him in case. And obviously, everybody's always going to be willing to fight Conor because, again, you're going to get eyes to your fight and you're going to get a big payday. So I don't imagine if he does win, he's going to have an issue finding a next opponent at all. And I know he said he wanted to fight relatively soon just to keep him back in that fighting shape, because I know he had talked about before when he's not focused or he's not when he's not kept busy, he loses some of his focus. So in order to keep him busy, you got to be able to fight, whether that's April, March, May, June, whenever. I don't imagine he'll take another year or so off to fight again. Again, assuming he's serious about this, and again, assuming he wins. If he loses and Cowboy's able to get him to submit, just like Khabib did in his last fight, I believe, then again, the story's a little bit different. But yeah, I'll have my eyes peeled on that one on Saturday night, and also we'll be back here on Sunday to talk about whatever happens during the fight, after the fight, anybody he calls out, anybody that calls him out, anything that comes with that fight, we'll be here to talk about on the next episode of the podcast. So, to finish it out here today, after this next break, we are going to talk about Odell Beckham Jr. For a guy who's not playing in the playoffs, he definitely has had his name in quite a few headlines, especially since Monday's national championship game. And there were even more developments that came from his actions during that game that came out earlier today, being Thursday. So we will talk about those and what they mean and what it could mean right after this break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship, we got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, Odell Beckham. I mean, he is a guy that, for better or for worse, seems to be in the news, whether it's from something he's done or something someone else has said or something someone said about him, whatever. Like I said, he's always in the news for better or worse, and this week is absolutely no different. He started off relatively new, just because on Monday he was around the team, on the sidelines, in the locker room, celebrating with the players. I mean, he's from New Orleans, I believe, obviously went to LSU. Has always gone back, always supported them whenever he can. So that was not surprising. And then obviously all the players seemed very happy to have him around. Like I said, he was invited to the sideline, he was invited into the locker room, so it's not like they were trying to keep him out and he snuck his way in. Like, he's a big part of the team. I mean, he gave them like headphones, gave them cleats and stuff. So he's, like I said, he's around the program a lot and gives back a lot. But I know earlier in the week he made some headlines because of the money he gave out to, I believe in the video, Justin Jefferson was one of the players. I don't remember I couldn't see who the other player was. I don't remember what the other number was, but I know he was under some hot water because of the money he gave out to the players. I mean, the LSU originally claimed it was counterfeit. I mean, it looked very real to me, so I think they were just trying to get it off the trail, get people off their trail. But then, unfortunately, Joe Burrow came on, I think it was Part of My Take, or he did some interview, and they asked him about it, and then, obviously, Joe Burrow not being a student at LSU anymore, now that the season's done, he said that it was real, because, again, he can't get in trouble for it. So that was unfortunate, because then the LSU had to put out a statement, because now, like, obviously that's illegal and in terms of NCAA violations. So now you're not trying to. Granted, it's after the game, so I don't know if they can do anything about it in terms of, like, vacating the title or whatever. And I don't think they will, because it's not like it's that serious, in my personal opinion. And also, I mean, Justin Jefferson, if he was the only player that got the money, like I said, is the one in the video I saw, he declared for the draft. So, again, he's out of school, so it doesn't really matter. But, yeah, so that was unfortunate for him in that regard. And then also, earlier today, like I said, being Thursday night, there was a warrant issued for his arrest following the alleged slapping, the alleged backside slapping incident on Monday night in the locker room. I mean, a video was going around, so if you've seen it, there was, and also this kind of story came out too a little bit, that there was security guard, because you're not supposed to smoke in the locker rooms, understandably so, but the LSU players, they were smoking cigars and stuff. I mean, obviously there were a lot of very good, very clean shots of Joe Burrow sitting on a couch of some sort, smoking, or sitting in a chair, smoking a cigar. I mean, LSU had it in their post-game celebration video, so obviously they thought it was cool. But, again, security guards were trying to do their job or whatever, and they were policing that. It seems a bit petty to me, just like, hey, let the guys celebrate, have their fun. But whatever. So, you saw in the video he was talking to one of the linemen, I believe Lewis is his last name. I think he's the right guard. And, I mean, he's 23, he's a graduate, so, like, again, he's done. Or, I'm assuming he's graduated, so he should be done with the team, but as you saw, no one in the video itself was doing any smoking, but I guess, like, he would just, I think he showed it like he was in, like, a Gatorade bottle or some sort of drink bottle. You could kind of see something that looked like a cigar in there, and then the guy was talking about the burn marks on the floors and stuff like that. So I think, again, just trying to do his job, but again, just like let the guys have their fun, in my opinion. And then Odell's in the background, and then he smacks the guy on his backside, and that is something he should not have done, because, one, even if he's not officially a cop, he's a security guard or whatever, that you're not supposed to touch security. But I think it would just, like, I mean, obviously, I imagine, and also from other videos we've seen posted from that day, whether it's him trying to back down Karl Malone, or him going through the LSU band, trying to get them playing neck and being escorted out of the area where the band was. Like, he was under the influence of something. I don't know what that was. I'm not going to speculate, but he was under the influence of some kind. So I imagine in that moment he was trying to get the police officer to lighten up, and obviously the guy didn't take it that way. He was not happy about it. And then I could also, you see in the video after he does it, and the guy kind of looks at him, he starts, like, singing the song "Get the Gat." It's like it was a song that LSU had as a part of their championship video as well. So it was something that I guess the LSU players and the people associated with the program were singing or listening to in the locker room at the time. So I think he was trying to lighten him up and get him to sing the song. and the security guard was not having it. And so then after the a couple of days had gone by, because this happened all Monday night, so you would have thought that this would have been done for because nothing really happened. I saw the video a couple of days ago. I remember I didn't really think too much of it then, but obviously I didn't know who the guy was, like whether that was security or whoever in the video. But it comes to that, and then so now there's a warrant issued for his arrest, and a report that came out on NOLA.com earlier today, it was saying that the 48-year-old lieutenant said his first action was to punch Odell Beckham in the face, but he kept it cool, which is, a bit severe. Come on, guy. I understand he touched you, and no one has the right to be touched when they don't want to be touched, but punching a guy in the face in the middle of a locker room seems a bit extra. But that's just my personal opinion. Again, the fact that this even has to be mentioned in the article is kind of bad. And so then the next day, so he didn't do anything. Next day, however, the officer called the New Orleans Police Department and said he wanted to press charges according to court records. By Thursday morning, the police had obtained a warrant to arrest Odell Beckham, obviously, blah, blah, blah. News of the arrest warrant came down as of late Thursday. He had neither surrendered to authorities or been arrested. And yes, then the security guard was ordered into the locker room. He said some of the players were argumentative at first, but then they eventually complied, and then that's when Odell did his thing. Then, according to the police, he wanted to react, and luckily he didn't, because that would have been a disaster. Especially since it was caught on video. If it wasn't caught on video, that's one thing, but since somebody was recording on their IG story the whole encounter, which is the only reason why we even have any visual evidence of this at all, that would have been a disaster if he got caught punching Odell in the middle of the locker room. That would have been a mess. And also he said he considered arresting Beckham at the time, but he decided against it due to the jovial atmosphere in the locker room, which again makes a lot of sense. They just won, so obviously people are going to be happy. But the sworn statement suggests that the officer later realized who had slapped him after a cell phone video of the encounter had gone viral online. And after calling the NOPD and undergoing an interview early Wednesday, the officer indicated he wanted to press charges. So this is where it gets interesting for me, right there, is because he saw, if you watch the video, he turned around and looked Odell in the face. So you saw who it was. You didn't need it to be identified, because you saw who it was. You could have found out who that was immediately. But he chose not to, because he clearly didn't know who Odell was, which is a completely separate point. But not every security guard, maybe he's a football fan, and he doesn't play for the Saints, obviously. So that's not that big of a deal. He doesn't know Odell, but it's kind of shocking, especially he's from New Orleans. But whatever. But yes, that's what gets interesting, is because he said that he waited, he didn't do anything. The statement suggests that the officer later realized who had slapped him after a cell phone video of the encounter had gone viral online. So that means that you didn't notice it until other people pointed out for you that was Odell Beckham Jr. And then from my vantage point, that means that, alright, you realize, oh, this guy's famous, I can press charge out of him and at least make a spectacle of it and embarrass him the way he embarrassed me, and also maybe get some money out of him. And that's where I'm like, alright, come on, now we're going too far. Now, I am no way am I defending Odell Beckham. He is a grown man. He should know that his actions have consequences, and he should know that is not something you can do, especially to a security guard, police officer, or whatever. However, if you're going to tell me you looked the man in the face and didn't identify him in the moment, but then after you saw the video go online, aka you find out who it was, Odell Beckham Jr., a star NFL wide receiver who did that to you, and then you wanted to press charges, then that's when I'm like, alright, this is getting a little fishy. It's getting a little fishy, and it seems to me like this is more of a a notoriety thing, or just a money thing, than it was actually wanting to arrest a guy for committing a crime. Because again, if you didn't want to arrest him in the moment, alright, that's fine. You could just make sure hey, make sure he doesn't leave after all this is done, after everybody's cleared out, we're going to take him in and commit him on battery, or simple battery or whatever. You could have done that. You let it go. But then after the fact, after you find out who it was, now you want to come back and be like, oh, okay, now I'm going to press charge. Like, I'm just like, all right, come on. That's where it gets a bit much. And that's where a lot of discussion went. Like, obviously, there's two sides to this. Everybody was like, and again, I don't disagree. You should never put your hands on an officer. Well, again, if you would have punched him in the face, that would have been a tad bit extreme. But again, you can't determine how people react to what you do to them. So if someone touches you in a way you don't like, and then you get punched in the face for it, I get it. But again, it's in the middle of a locker room with a celebration that would have been a bit extreme. Then obviously that would have been a disaster if the headline is Odell Beckham gets punched in the LSU locker room while the team celebrates. That would have been a mess for that guy. But yeah, just once because that wasn't something that came out earlier today. Same thing that came out later on in the day. So once you find out that and again, this is on NOLA.com. It was tweeted out by article was tweeted out by a reporter, Raymond Antonio Vargas, who works for the New Orleans Advocate. So you tweeted that out earlier today. So if you want to go read it there, you can find it there. But yeah, so then once I saw that, and I was like, all right, so then that's kind of a bit of a mess, because that means that he didn't want to press charges until he realized who it was and that he could press charges for it. And I mean, again, he was already in the locker room policing the guys already. And again, the funny thing is that, I mean, I don't know what did or didn't happen with Joe Burrow in terms of what happened with him with the police and the security guards or whatever, but the fact that there are so many photos and videos of Joe Burrow smoking a cigar in the locker room, in a locker room, on the field, walking off the field, like walking through the tunnels, like whatever. There's many videos and photos of him smoking a cigar, but then he's accosting this police officer's accosting other members of the team and making a big deal out of it. It's just kind of the whole situation is just kind of weird to me. Like, it just seems like a guy taking his job a little too seriously on a night where everyone's just trying to have fun and have a good time. And again, did Odell go too far? Definitely. But again, I believe in his mind. I mean, I can't put words in his mouth. I don't know exactly what he was thinking. I don't know what his intentions were. But I imagine he was trying to just, like, get the guy, like, hey, like, lighten up, come on, man. And obviously, you can't do that to a police officer. But I just think, again, he was under the influence of some kind, I imagine. So he just probably wasn't thinking straight, and that's why he did it. Because I imagine you could say that to the guy without touching him in any way. And then none of this would have happened. Everybody would have been happy, and everyone would have went home good. But yeah, it would just... I think this is just the case of one guy wanting to assert his power in terms of the players over, like, getting them not to smoke cigars. Because again, like I'm saying, there were more prominent people smoking cigars, and I didn't hear any stories yet of anybody telling Joe Burrow he couldn't do it. So that part's definitely interesting. And then obviously with the arrest warrant thing, it seems like a case of a guy wanting to make a spectacle out of a guy that he now knows is famous, because clearly he looked at Odell Beckham in the face and saw that it was him. So if he didn't know who it was then, if he didn't know who it was then, he could have easily found out from one of his other security guards or one of the very many players or staff members on LSU that was in the locker room at the time. But he chose not to. And then now that the video went viral, now he will all of a sudden just be like, hey, like, oh, let's go and press charges. I'm like, all right, come on, guy. Well, yeah, I guess we'll see what happens with that, if he ever ends up turning himself in, if this all just kind of blows over. Or maybe it doesn't, and maybe the guy takes it to court and is, like, very serious about this. But regardless, we will find that out sooner or later. And when we do, and if anything big, some of that, the other members of the GSMC Sports Podcast family will be here to talk about it. So that'll do it for me here today on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. As always, if you like what you've heard today, if you like what you heard on the other episodes that we have put out, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll never miss an episode. You'll always be on top of whenever we drop the stuff, and you can listen to it right away. Again, if you like what you heard, if you could please give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast, it'd be very helpful. Allow us to see what you guys like, what you guys don't like, where you can improve, because obviously this is all about you guys. So whatever you want is what we will try to bring to you. Again, if you're on social media, we're on social media. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Communicate with us that way as well. We can go back and forth. You can ask us questions. You can ask us our thoughts about different things. We will engage with you there as well. As always, I have been Chris Blades, and until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.